Hey everyone, it's Bill here. I hope you're all really well. Now this is the first of 4 supplementary lessons, kind of top-ups if you like, that I'm producing to support those of you who are going through my Piano for Beginners course here on YouTube. So if you're going through the course right now, greetings. This is Bill from the future, here to help you out, yeah? Because the course has been around for a long time now, yeah? I posted the first tutorials about 8 years ago, I think. And in that time, I've seen thousands of people go through it, yeah? Something like 20 to 25,000 people, according to my best guess, have now completed the course. And as you might imagine, in that time, I've learned an awful lot about what helps people, and I've answered the same questions over and over and over again. Now this tutorial is going to sit between lessons 5 and 6 in the series playlist, but it will help you wherever you are in kind of the first half of the course really. So even if you're just on lesson 1 or 2, then stick around because there's going to be stuff here that's useful, particularly what I'm going to say about practice and the sample practice plans that I've prepared for you. But even if you're as far on as lesson 8 or 9, there's going to be stuff here that will help you reinforce your skills. Now speaking of those sample practice plans, as with all the lessons in the course, there's a PDF, quite a chunky one because I've put quite a lot of exercises and reminders and things in there. You can find that using the Google Drive link down below in the description text, and again I'll put that link over at billspianopages.com/beginners. Are we ready? Let's get going. So there are 3 big topic areas that I want to deal with in this first supplementary lesson. The first one is the very difficult business of getting your hands working together on the piano keyboard, what we sometimes call hand independence. The second big one is reinforcement and the importance of reinforcement. I think the most common reason for people dropping out of the course is that they get to lesson kind of 7, 8 or 9 and they don't have the basics drilled down. So we're going to do some work on how to reinforce and keep reinforcing your basic skills. Then the third big topic area is practice. Now this is something that I didn't touch on much in the original series, but which I've learned a lot about in the past kind of 5 or 6 years actually. So we're going to talk about how to structure your practice, how to give yourself the best chance of success, how much to do, how often, and I've also given you some sample practice plans which you'll find in the PDF. So hand independence really is the biggie. I get more questions about getting hands working together on the piano keyboard than anything else in the early stages of the course, yeah? And what I'm going to talk about now, like I said, is applicable to you if you're anywhere between lessons like 1 and 9, okay? Because some of the exercises and strategies that I'm going to teach you, you can start using now, even if you're at the very start of the course, even if you haven't got to lesson 5, where hands together really kicks in. So basically, the strategies we're going to cover today fall into 3 categories, which I'm going to call understanding, exercising, and balancing. First of all, understanding is all about your mindset. It's all about your mental approach to playing with hands together. And that is based on understanding a couple of important things, which aren't necessarily obvious. The first one is that playing with both hands together on the piano is more than twice as difficult than just playing with one hand. So understand that, understand it's difficult for everybody. And also, you need to understand that the feeling of frustration you get when you play with hands together has a very logical root, okay? Again, it's not obvious, but it's to do with the speed at which we learn things. When we're learning to do something on the piano, we've got 2 types of memory at work, if you like. We've got what you call declarative memory, which is our memory for facts and information, and what we call procedural memory, or a physical aspect of procedural memory in this context, which is what we sometimes call our muscle memory, you know, learning what to do, memorizing what to do with our fingers in particular times and at particular places. Now, the difficulty is that our declarative memory, our memory for facts, learns things much more quickly than our muscle memory, okay? So that is the root of the very typical problem you get where you're thinking to yourself, oh, I know what my hands need to do, but they just won't do it, okay? Yeah, that frustration just stems from the fact that your reasoning mind can work out how to do things faster than your fingers can work out how to do them. So when you're first putting hands together on the piano, expect it to take longer than you expect. Second, exercising. Now, there are various exercises you can do right from day one, actually, even if you're just on lesson one, there are various exercises you can do that will really help your hand independence when you get to the stage of dealing with it, or even if you're later on in the course, this stuff is going to help. And all the exercises I'm going to show you today are based on what we would call a simple contrary motion exercise. And in its simplest form, it looks like this. 2 thumbs, both on middle C to start with. We're just going to do this. Okay, so we're going from middle C out to our 5th fingers sequentially along the white note. So this 5th finger in the left hand lands on F, in the right hand we land on G, and back again. And to start with, just get that really kind of on your fingers, do it over and over again. Focus on being precise, making sure that corresponding notes are landing at the same time and that it's as even as you can make it. Over and over again. Now, when we're trying to get better at anything on the piano, we always try to challenge ourselves. We always try to keep ourselves in the sweet spot between doing something that's too difficult and doing something that's too easy, okay? We always want a level of challenge. Now, with hand independence, there are 2 ways of challenging ourselves. The first is by moving our hands further apart, because that's stretching our brain's proprioception, which is our sense of where our extremities are. So you can make the exercise just a little bit more difficult by picking 2 notes entirely at random. Doesn't matter what they are, it doesn't even matter if you don't know what they're called yet. Let's have that one and that one, D and E, and do the same thing. Really quite straightforward, okay? And you can go out further and further and further, just making things a little bit more challenging for you. Then things get more challenging when you start to do slightly different things in each hand, okay? So for example, we could play smoothly in the left hand, but bouncily in the right. So legato in the left hand, but staccato in the right. See what I'm doing there? Everything in the left hand is smooth, but in the right hand, short and detached. And you can reverse it. By and large, everything you do in your right hand, try and make your left hand do as well. Okay, good little tip there. So that's something you can do. You can offset the notes slightly. You see what I'm doing there? I'm just playing the left hand staccato, legato as I was previously. And in the right hand, I'm playing staccato notes, but each one slightly after the note in the left. Let me do that really slowly. And in the early days, you should find that really quite challenging. Not impossible, but challenging, and it will help you. And there are loads of ways you can vary those. You can think of your own variations. You can actually send both hands in the same direction. You could try it on some black notes, like take the groups of black notes here. That's quite a good one. You can play around with the dynamics, so you can start soft and get louder. So basically you can kind of make up your own exercises taking those ingredients, as long as they stretch you, as long as they challenge you. The third one I said is balancing, and this is to do with how you practice with your hands together on the piano. The traditional way of learning to put your hands together is to play hands separately first and then to put your hands together. And people do that, but they kind of get it wrong, because they say, right, I'm learning this piece, say it's the piece from lesson 5, and they say, right, I'm going to practice the right hand, I'm going to practice the left hand, then I'm going to put the hands together. And they never go back to separate hands practice. The secret of success is to practice separate hands, then put hands together. Then practice separate hands again, then hands together again, and alternate the two and gradually blend them, okay? So you're starting off with mostly separate hands practice and not much hands together practice, and the hands together practice is really slow and difficult, but you grind through it anyway, because you know it's just doing it is what's important. And then gradually, I don't know what these two creatures are, but whatever they are, they fly past each other, and you're doing less and less separate hands practice and more hands together practice. And that might happen over the course of a week or 2 weeks or whatever. If you look in the PDF, I've done you a kind of visualization of how that might work. I'm just jumping into the next day when I'm editing this video because I want to tell you about something I'm noticing that's really weird. I'm looking at this next to the beginner's course tutorials, yeah? And what's really obvious is that when I made those original beginner's course tutorials, the technology was much simpler, yeah? I was literally doing things by writing notes on a whiteboard on screen. Whereas these days, I spend ages and ages adding fancy graphics to my videos. Now here's a question for you. Are those fancy graphics actually an improvement? Or is the old school way of doing things, the whiteboard way of doing things, is that just as good? Or is it maybe even a little bit better? Is it a bit more human? Let me know what you think down in the comments. And while you're about it, if you could give this video a like and hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to my channel, that would be amazing. Okay, so the second major area that I want to think about, like I said, is reinforcement. The critical importance of drilling down the basic stuff relative to wherever you are at the moment in the course, and especially the seemingly easy stuff at the beginning of the course. Now, if you look at the early course PDFs, you'll see lots of exercises like this, note naming exercises and things like that. And it's really easy to say, yeah, I'll come and look that stuff up later if I need it. Yeah, I think I've roughly kind of got the idea. And like I said, what happens is you then get later in the course, and by that stage, you've got so much to think about when you're, for example, playing hands together, that you don't want to be having to consciously think about where an A is on the piano keyboard or what the note in the second space of the treble stave is. Yeah. Instead, that information needs to be automatic, because if it isn't automatic, then all the more complicated stuff you're going to do isn't going to happen. So really get the foundations drilled down. Now, to help you do that, well, there are 2 or 3 ways. The most basic strategy you can use is always be going back a couple of lessons in the course. Say you're at lesson 5, be looking at the material in lesson 3 and 4 every day. Just 5 minutes every day, part of your practice session, review earlier material. Yeah. There's also other stuff that I've prepared for you. If you look in the PDF, I've done a load of exercises that mimic the exercises from lessons, especially lessons 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so picking out melodies, note naming, finding notes with fingers, all of that kind of stuff. You can really use those exercises to drill down. There's several pages of them in the PDF. Speaking of PDFs, you'll find a ton of great content over at my Patreon community. Joining the community will give you loads of benefits. You get complimentary access to my always popular piano packs and to my exercises, inventions and ideas skill development PDFs. You also get access to all the articles, podcast episodes, video tutorials and other materials I create exclusively for my Patreon supporters. Plus, you get priority support with your piano learning from me personally, and you can chat with the rest of the community if you want to. There are lots of piano learners there who are just like you, and many of them are going through the beginner's course. Now, it's super affordable to join my Patreon, especially if you choose the discounted yearly subscription, and it helps to support all of the content that I make. If you can, by the way, please join through the Patreon website rather than through the iPhone app, as that ensures that more of your contribution goes directly towards what I'm doing here. So patreon.com/Bill Hilton is the URL. I'd really love to see you over there. Third big area is the way you structure and organize your practice. This is something I often get questions about. And the key rule is that little and often is best. Yeah. If you're in the early stages of the course, I usually suggest 15 to 20 minutes a day. And if you want to split that into 2 sessions, 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, that's great, that's no problem at all. As you get deeper into the course, you might want to do a bit more. But the most important thing is to make sure you're practicing most days of the week. I think the ideal is 6 days a week. I always try to have a day's rest from practice because that helps as well. And it also helps to make sure that you're not hurting yourself. Again, if you're just starting out, if you've got big dreams, you're thinking, I know, I'll practice an hour a day. You need to be careful because if your hands aren't used to it, you can hurt yourself quite easily. You get a repetitive strain injury. You really don't want one of those. So In the early stages, think in terms of maybe 20 minutes a day, 6 days a week, and that's going to help you make pretty decent progress. If you can, try to do your practice roughly the same time every day. That's going to help with the habit, and try and give it some kind of structure. So as you start working on scales and exercises, maybe do some of those first. Start with the scale of C major, then move on to working on whatever piece you happen to be learning. So we're doing about 20 minutes a day, a bit more if you want to, 6 days a week. We're starting with exercises, something that warms up our fingers, and then we're learning our main piece or whatever it happens to be. That's really from lesson 5 onwards when we get into learning little pieces. But that kind of baby steps over a long period of time, that's the way this thing works. Okay, finally, I've got a bunch of little things that I've noticed over the years or that people have asked me over the years that don't fit into the kind of big 3 categories that we've talked about so far. And I just want to mention, I've got them scrawled on a piece of paper here. First one, people ask me a lot about posture. First rule of posture when following my beginner's piano course is don't use me as an example. I've got weird arms. I've got this thing called radial ulnar synostosis in my arms. It's a congenital thing. It means my hands are basically screwed on the wrong way. So I'm a terrible example of posture on the piano. Yeah. So don't do classic. Don't do what I do. Do what I say. So don't try and copy me. Look at the way other people sit at the piano. But broadly, if you can sit in an upright way, you know, central to middle C-ish. I'm not quite central, I need to move this way a little bit. And keep your arms and your shoulders relaxed, but kind of poised. Okay, that is the way to do it. Posture is somewhat oversold, I think, in terms of its importance if you are ultimately interested in getting into jazz, blues, pop or whatever. If you are one day going to become a high-level classical piano player, then posture starts to be really, really important. But if you're basically going to be a hobbyist piano player or you're going to be an improviser, those are your aims, then the most important thing is that you're comfortable, you're getting on the notes effectively, and you're not getting any sort of pain. Okay, so making sure that you're the right height off the ground is quite an important one. You don't want to be getting back pain or shoulder pain while you're playing the piano. And if you do start to get pain anywhere, then move things around, take some professional advice. Physiotherapists can be really great. I've had some really good advice from physios over the years about sort of minimising discomfort at the piano. I actually wrote a long article about posture at the piano on my Patreon recently. So if you're signed up to my Patreon, you can go and find that. I've got more thoughts on it there. The other one I get asked about very regularly is kit. People get in touch with me and say, I've only got a 61 key keyboard. Can I follow the course? Or I haven't got a keyboard at all. Can I follow the course? And I always say, work with what you've got. So if you've only got a little keyboard, then you can learn a lot with that. It will do for now. Ultimately, it's going to be good to be getting on a piano, get an 88 key, touch sensitive digital piano with a sustain pedal, maybe even a real piano. But for now, if all you've got is 61 or 48 keys, then work with what you've got. There was one guy, I've told this story before, but one guy did the first few lessons of the beginner's piano course just using a keyboard drawn on a piece of paper, literally. So if he can do that, you can, you know, so can you. So don't obsess about kit. Lots of people are like, oh, I need to get a top-end digital piano. I need to spend thousands of pounds. I need a Nord piano just like Bill's before I can do the course. Not at all. Ideally, ultimately, you're going to get a piano, but you can do the early stuff in the course, especially with something very basic. Next one people ask me a lot is how long will the course take? I think the median length of time, having seen, like I said, thousands of people go through it, is about 8 months. But that's quite a big distribution. The more interesting question there is how long to spend on each lesson. And I say for the very early lessons, well, you know, like lessons 1, 2 and 3, you can probably polish them off in 3 or 4 days. Okay, as long as you're learning stuff and you're regularly going back to them. But gradually it should be extending. And by the time you get to lesson 5, probably at least a week. Okay, probably more, and then more and more and more. And then the final few lessons when we're learning more difficult pieces, up to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, you know, whatever it takes. Okay, I hope that kind of top up was useful. Any questions based on anything in this tutorial you're not sure about, stick them in the comment thread down below. And like I said, if you would like to check out my Patreon or maybe some of my books or stuff like that, then you'll find links in the description text below, probably on the screen somewhere, appearing magically about now, and also in the PDF. Right, there we go. Go and crack on with your piano practice and let me know how you get on.